cop keeps interrogating me on where I'm coming from. My pleasure. Disclaimer. I am a woman and was polite otherwise. YMMV. When I was younger, I would visit natural parks. One time as I was driving home, a police officer pulled me over for alcohol testing. I politely complied, yet the officer must have thought I was peddling drugs or something, because he asked for a further drug test and started interrogating me. I told him that I came from the natural park, yet he was asking me the same question on repeat. Finally, I kept a cordial demeanor, imagining myself as if I were talking to a coworker and with the appropriate delivery. I went on a long monologue on how I enjoyed visiting natural parks, which road I took there, where I stopped for petrol, how much I paid for petrol, where I parked, which track I walked on, when did I decide to turn back on the track, which birds I saw on the track, the weather at the park, and so on. Finally, after a minute, he told me to shush and then let me go after the drug test came clear. I think some cops would have gotten more angry by this behavior, but what worked for me was my genuine delivery. Reminds me a bit of a time when I was crossing the border at an airport and the guy just kept asking me what I was bringing across with me. I started out with the very generic description of my work computer and personal items. Not good enough. So I detailed my electronics and said other things like clothes and toiletries and such. Not good enough. I asked him if there was something specific he wanted to know about, but he wouldn't say. Just that he wanted to know what I was bringing into the country. So I started verbally cataloging the contents of my purse. When I got to tampons, he let me go. This reminds me of someone using the strategy of putting their 4-year-old on the phone to get rid of a telemarketer. Nicely done. A friend of mine conducted a very thorough research on her family, because they came from all over the world. So when a guy asked her, "But where do you really come from?" quote, she gave him a very detailed description of where her ancestors were born and where they had lived. After a while, the guy said, "A simple 'I'm American of X descent' would have sufficed." To which my friend said, "Oh, but you said you wanted me to tell you where I'm really from." Officer, you seem to be forgetting things I keep telling you. Are you okay? Did you hit your head? Are you on drugs? Should I call someone for you? I'm really concerned for your welfare. I'm a courier for a med-sized shipping company in the Twin Cities. I was pulled over mid-delivery, and the cop asked where I was coming from. I said, "Everywhere. I'm a delivery driver." When my mom was a young woman, there was a cop in town who had a hate-on for kids on motorcycles, which included one of my uncles and mom's favorite brother. Said cop harassed my uncle so much my papa had to intervene and tell Officer Crotchrocket to lay off or he'd go over his head. Papa worked for the city, and everybody liked him, so he would have gotten things done. Long story short, Officer Crotchrocket could pronounce my family's Czech surname perfectly, and probably did so in his sleep. So when he pulled over my mom, her first and only traffic ticket to this day, he decided to be an a-hole and asked her, "And how do you pronounce your name?" Quote, without batting an eye, she responded, "Dorothy." She would have probably gotten a warning if it had been anybody else but Officer Crotchrocket. So she ran no risk being mouthy. Telling the truth to police officers, pretty much worldwide, is likely to confuse them faster. Some will walk away, however others, depending on shift length and number of days before day off, could be more annoyed than satisfied of innocence. What drug test? Some law enforcement just gets off on the power trip. I used to be stationed at Fort Drum, NY. I lived north of the base, less than an hour to Canada. Border Patrol would set up roadblocks to check IDs and whatnot between my house and the army base. Most of the time, it went smoothly. One of the times, the dude just kept asking questions and didn't believe where I was coming from or going. I was in my military uniform. Handed him my military ID and New York driver's license with my current address. He insisted I was lying about being a soldier. I have zero idea what gave him that impression because I look just like any other soldier. When this didn't go well and I had to go see the judge. "You changed your story?" Quote, I told him. Then he asked again and again. Each time he didn't understand. I figured he was slow and I explained in a different way with different words that he might understand. Nah, I don't think it was the genuine delivery that got you let off. But more of the tests coming back clear and the fact that he had no evidence whatsoever and he can't have false charges on his record. That would be classed as harassment and get him in a lot of trouble. Especially if you're under 21. What rapid drug test was this? As far as I'm aware, there is none performed at traffic stops, as it would require a biological sample sent to lab. I do not talk to cops. Flex Your Rights website edit. URL formatting. One time I was returning from a Renaissance camping event, SCAA, after a rainstorm popped up, and had to go through a border check. The guard asked me like 89 times where I was coming from. Maybe 6 times he asked if there were drugs in Tijuana, and several more about if I had been drinking or smoking. I was, however, wearing a green and yellow tunic and had some mud spots from packing in the rain. Conversely, I also had a 6'7" Swede in a Viking garb in the passenger seat. I felt that should have clued him in that I wasn't border hopping. I'm also Chinese, not Mexican or Latino. DWI attorney here. Do not do these tests. My mom was visiting me from out of state. We were driving to my home from the mall, and stopped at a light. Saw a cop behind me turn his lights on as the light turned green. I thought he needed around me, so I pulled onto a side street to let him by, but he followed me. I told my mom, "Oh, I'm getting pulled over." She said, "Yes, I noticed that." Had no clue why. I was perplexed. Cop came to my window and said, "Your tabs expired 6 months ago. What's up with that?" I had absolutely forgotten to get my plates renewed. Thanks ADHD. And no one had noticed for 6 months? I was stunned for a sec. And cue my elderly mother, starting to cry in the passenger seat. "Honey, that was about the time Dad died." It was true. My stepfather passed away from colon cancer 6 months prior. The cop just told me to get my tabs renewed and to send him the station proof by Monday. I did. Edit punctuation. When I first passed my test 26 years back, I soon found myself stopped at random for checks 2 or 3 times a month. I know why though. 21-year-old driving an old Japanese hatchback. That in my town at the time was a common minicab or old person's car. The fact that it was cheap to buy, run, insure and maintain did not compute in the cops' heads. I think they were convinced I was an unlicensed taxi. I did give lifts home from work though to help folks out. The other factor cops understood when they asked me to get out the car, which was as I'm very tall, 6'11", give it take an inch. It was something I could get into easy. I think the fact that it was always roadworthy despite its mileage and age bugged them too. It came to a head when the same cop pulled every day of a bank holiday weekend. I leave quick fit after getting new exhaust and tires. Pulled over 30 minutes later. Driving the following day to a friend's house for a barbecue. Pulled over. Jump starting a friend? Tried to do me for illegal parking. I lost my temper, made a complaint to find there was no records of my stops by this officer. Thank heck he retired. Gosh, how I hate it when police demand that you explain yourself only for them to accuse you of eating their ear off once you do. Don't talk to cops without a lawyer. Their job is to make you incriminate yourself. That is when you answer become I don't answer questions. Right to remain silent.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.